Hey guys, what's up? It's Vince here. We're back with another video. Today we're going to be discussing the SSOU metagame, in particular the Viability Rankings. Just for those of you who don't know what the Viability Rankings are, basically we rank every single Pokemon from S rank being the superior Pokemon, A rank being the really strong Pokemon, B rank being, the so-so Pokemon, and so on and so forth in the metagame in one big thread labeled the Viability Rankings, indicating how viable those Pokemon are. Hey, crazy how that works, right? But yeah, so we're going to be going over all of the things that rose and dropped in the last rank. I'm going to go ahead and link you guys to the thread because I actually did something special here in that I opened up the thread to questions. I posted what rose, what dropped, and I said, hey, if you aren't sure why something happened, ask in the thread. I went through every single question, pages worth of questions, and I responded last night. It was a fun time. I'm also going to kind of do it in video form in the sense that I know what those questions are now. I know what the rises and drops are now. And I'm just going to go through it all, give some detail. Hopefully, just sit down and spend 15 to 20 minutes going over everything that shifted in the metagame, why, and what you guys should expect moving forward. So let's go ahead, without further ado, and get into it now. Thank you guys so much for the patience. This is a video that's taken a couple days to really get in the hang of. But yeah, first off, Heatran rose up from A+ to S- rank. This means that it went from being one of the best Pokemon in the metagame that kind of defines it to really a metagame defining Pokemon within the top 3 Pokemon in the metagame. Previously, we didn't have an S- rank. S was really just reserved for Landorus, Team Dragapult, but we felt that Heatran was above the A+ tier, but not quite in the S tier, so we actually created an S- rank specifically for Heatran right now. We're also going to eventually vote on things like Clefable, potentially rising to that tier 2, but I don't think it's going to quite qualify. It didn't this time around. We'll have to wait and see next time, but when it comes to Heatran, very, very strong Pokemon. It offers a premium both offensive and defensive presence in the metagame right now. Magma Storm trapping sets are very hard to keep in check in the long haul, coupled with the fact that it has access to a whole plethora of options. You could run Taunt to prevent recovery moves and opposing setup. You could run Toxic to help deter bulky water types and things like Blissey or things like Hippowdon, which go a long way. Heavy Slam is great for Calm-Mind, Clefable, and also doing that consistent damage to things like Dragapult, Blissey, offensive Tapu as well, really posing more of a threat than you otherwise would. And then you also have Stealth Rock. Stealth Rock can protect the normal special defensive variant, Lava Plume for burns, Earth Power to hit other Heatran, to things that you want to get the super effective kit on like Victini and Blacephalon as well, which also have in the rise. Yeah. All in all, Heatran defensively is great against things like Volcarona, Zapdos, Clefable. Offensively, it's really amazing against the standard cores with like Corviknight plus Toxapex, really just finding a lot of openings and being able to trap things with those cores. Heatran is without a doubt one of the top 5 Pokemon, in my opinion, sits at number 3 in the metagame right now behind Landorus, Team Dragapult, really epitomizing the bulky offense and balanced archetypes that have grown more and more in popularity in recent times. Next up we have Toxapex, which definitely took a big hit in recent months, finding itself again among S or S- Pokemon previously, but then fell down to A+, and it finally fell down to A last time around, but now we're kind of seeing a bit of a rebound. We're seeing sets that can take advantage of things like Future Sight Slowking, which otherwise would abuse it, things like Knockoff, Toxic, even Light Screen, finding themselves used on Toxapex. Admittedly though, it's still not in its best space ever. Ton of Misty Train, a lot of Trick and Spikes in the metagame right now, of course trapping from things like Heatran that we just discussed, even Whirlpool Tapu needs to really abuse it, and then Future Sight's prevalent as ever. So while Toxapex is an A+ rank Pokemon, it's probably one of the bottom 2 or 3, but we felt it was more indicative of that rank than A. Another water type rising from A to A+ is going to be Urshifu Rapid Strike, the Pokemon that was previously in the shadow of Urshifu Single Strike, and once it got banned, something that really just never saw enough usage was Urshifu Rapid Strike, but now, at long last, it has thrived in the OU metagame, finding itself a very distinguished place with both the Choice Band and Protected Paths variant. It packs a punch with Surging Strikes in close combat. It has coverage options like Ice Punch for Dragonite, or it could even go Aqua Jet for priority, helping it revenge kill things like Volcarona. And U-Turn for pivoting is great as well. While it's true like things like Slowbro, Tapu Fini, and Toxics can handle it defensively, it is also true that these Pokemon are susceptible to chip and can be taken advantage of by things like Future Sight as well, making Urshifu Rapid Strike a very practical offensive Pokemon. And defensively, it does great against Dark types like Weevil and Bisharp, which are very common in the metagame right now. Things that you absolutely have to be cognizant of when playing. Moving forward, Weevil is the next Pokemon to find itself in A+ rank, a Pokemon that Urshifu Rapid and Toxic both do very well against, but offensive teams perhaps less so. The combination of speed and the Ice Dark Stab is absolutely menacing. Ice Shard to top it all off, getting a revenge kill on things like Dragon Dance Dragonite and Dragapult can be super helpful, but Knockoff with Stab and potential Swords Dance is super hard to switch into. Triple Axle is a nuke, killing things like Clefable at +2 in all likelihood as well. You run Adamant if you don't mind Tornado Starion. It still gets the jump on Kartana, things like that. You can run Jolly if you're scared of that and you want to win Weavile ties. There are a lot of options. You can run Low Kick for Heatran and Melmetal getting the kill at +2. A lot of options there. Choice Band, Heavy Duty Boots, even Scope Limbs if you're running Triple Axle. Overall, Weevil is menacing. It gives you a Ghost Resist as well, which on offensive teams cannot be overstated enough. Having something to deter Dragapult usage just a little bit on offense goes such a long way, because you're kind of going to force it into a position where no matter what stab it locks into, it's always going to be abused and kind of force trades. And that really minimizes Dragapult's ability to dampen offense's viability, making it so that these teams, bulky offense, hyper offense, are completely revitalized in the metagame, seeing more success than ever before this generation, arguably, despite Dragapult being better than ever before as a fast breaker type for those teams. So yeah, speaking of Pokemon that work very well on offense, we also see Dragonite, one of the few dragon types alongside Dragapult that's really thriving in this metagame right now. Dragonite is a very interesting option because it is more finesse than it is brute force, which is arguably the opposite of what we saw from it in prior generations. We're seeing Dragon Dance plus Roost with multi-scale be very effective right now. It's a premier check to things like Heatran, does well against Blaziken if you see that. Could set up on things like Willowboom and even potentially Kartana if it's choice locked as well. Not to mention this, but also you could run Earthquake for things like Heatran, Melmetal, Tyranitar. You could run Heal Bell for status from Scald and Toxic. You could run Substitute if you wish. Ice Punch for Lender's Tea. Yeah, a lot of options there. Fire Punch even for Pharaoh Throw and Corviknight if you want to get them out of the way quicker rather than later. All in all, Dragonite is a promising option. It's one of the few offensive checks to Heatran, and also it's a great way to kind of abuse Volcarona. One of the few hard counters to Volcarona if you're running a dual wing beat set and you don't get burnt on the first dual wing beat hit. Even then, you probably should win a 1v1 in all honesty. But yeah, no, definitely try Dragonite. It works especially well with Magnezone or on more offensive teams. Defensively, it can be a little passive. It can enable things like Toxic Hippowdon if it's not Substitute, or bulk up Corviknight, or, you know, on-wire Clefable, even physically defensive Clefable. You got to be hard against those Pokemon, but you'll use teammates to really take advantage of their presence in the metagame, so it can go a long way. Next up, we have Melmetal. Melmetal is surging back in viability, bashing through all of the opposing walls with Double Iron Bash and its complementary moves such as Thunder Punch, Earthquake, Ice Punch, Superpower, you name it, it does it. Assault Vest and Thunder Wave with Protective Pads are really the two variants that are soaring in viability right now. Of course, Choice Band is good too. All in all, Melmetal is a very strong option. I definitely would advise preparing for it thoroughly in your team building and also trying it out. It's awkward to fit as it doesn't have the defensive premiums that other steel types have. For example, it can't check Volcarona like Heatran, or it can't check ground types like Corviknight, but if you're able to fit it onto your team, maybe even with another steel type as a complement, it does great. It's one of the few Pokemon that can really abuse the presence of Clefable in our metagame as well, and it is a machine when it comes to 1v1ing things due to its great coverage and a mammoth bulk, being able to really survive any one hit in all likelihood, especially if it's not super effective. So yeah, definitely try out Melmetal in this metagame. Speaking of Pokemon finding their way up into the A ranks, a couple of Pokemon rose from all the way down in B+. So that's going to be Slowking Galar and Tapu Fini. Slowking Galar is interesting because it's kind of bounced back between the A's and the B ranks throughout its time in the DLC2 metagame. When it comes to Slowking Galar, it has a really convenient defensive typing, making it so that it's able to really soft check a lot of special attackers like Kyurem. Really does well against opposing Tapu Fini, which are surging in viability. And on top of that, Regenerator is super practical. It's able to really swap into things like pivoting Zapdos and Tornado Starion, or come in on, say, Clefable repeatedly and take advantage, set future sites up, and really set its team up for success. This, coupled with the fact that it soaks up Toxic Spikes, and again, it has nice coverage. Flamethrower for Steel types, Earthquake for Heatran, and that's another Steel type, admittedly. Sludge Bomb for those nasty poisons and getting great stab damage off. Future Sight for the strong damage looming overhead with teammates being like, oh crap, I can't break this, but with a Future Sight overtype, easily can do so. Even the options for Ice Beam take ground types and Psychic as well. It also can run a Calm Mindset with Shuka Berry, which is okay. I would personally advise against using it without like a lot of support, as I feel it's pretty easy to revenge skill with the abundance of Dark, Ghost, and ground types in the metagame. But with that said, it's still viable for sure. And if you're not feeling that, you could also run the Nasty Plot set too. So there is some unheard of viability with this Pokemon. We didn't really see that or explore it as much in the earlier parts of the metagame that now it's being untapped quite a bit. In addition to this, Tapu Fini rising up from B+ to A as well. Pokemon that is super practical in the metagame right now. It does well against Urshifu, does well against Weevil, does well against Heatran. We saw all three of those Pokemon rise, even does well against Dragonite. All in all, Tapu Fini is a very in-metagame pick. With Misty Train being as effective as ever, coupled with Tapu Fini having a versatile set mix, it makes it a very interesting option right now. Be it the Taunt Calm Mindset with Dragon Kiss healing up so much HP, or options like Trick plus Choice Scarf, Defog, and even the Whirlpool Nature's Madness Trapper set, taking advantage of things like Toxapex, Slowbro, Slowking, etc. Overall, it's a very effective option. I would definitely advise trying it out on your team. Next up, we have another Pokemon rising from V+. Unfortunately, for a Hippowdon, it's only needed A-, not quite to A, but Hippowdon in a metagame filled with potent ground types like Landorus, T, Garchomp, even things like Extradrill, which admittedly isn't doing as well right now. Hippowdon is finding its niche due to having great recovery, good longevity, and the ability to set up sand. Hippowdon is a great answer to electric types like Zeraora and Tapu Koko, while also still maintaining its normal defensive presence against things like fire types such as Bulky Volcarona lacking Safeguard. You can Toxic it, you can really damage Heatran, even getting off nice amounts of damage against things like Slowking Galar, and threatening a lot of things with Toxic that aren't Steel types as well. For example, you could really make so that Urshifu Rapid can't swap in, or Dragonite can't swap in. You got Toxic, Buzzwell, Toxic, Tapu Bulu, Toxic. This is going down the line here. All in all, Hippowdon is able to fight passivity against things not named Corviknight and Skarmory while also being a really important defensive option, spearheading that movement of balanced teams with Sand. Next up, we're going to see a couple Pokemon rise up from the B ranks. We see Buzzwell rising all the way up to A- alongside Hippowdon, and then we have Tapu Bulu and Victini rising up to B+ from the B rank. As for Buzzwell, it's grown more and more practical as an option in this metagame. It does super well against a plethora of physical attackers. We see things like Urshifu Rapid on the Protective Pad set, virtually any Weavile, even things like Kartana, Willowboom, all those Pokemon, Garchomp and Landorus T, as long as they're not mixed or toxic. Buzzwell does very well against those Pokemon. Being able to check all those Pokemon while still running a more offensively oriented set makes it so that not only you're not passive, especially if you're paired with future side support, but also you're pretty damn practical defensively, making it more possible for teams to be completed. Admittedly, Buzzwell has been encountering a more turbulent environment lately. It probably would have been A rank if not for this, but we've been seeing things like Aerial Ace on Weavile, Aerial Ace on Kartana, which actually is a thorn in Buzzwell's side right now. You have to really be cautious and play around those. So be cognizant of that when proceeding, but all in all, Buzzwell's still a pretty impressive option in my opinion. Next up, we have Tapu Bulu. Tapu Bulu is just chilling out there. Very strong Pokemon right now. Life Orb 3 attack. You run Horn Leech, Close Combat, Stone Edge with Swords Dance. Very hard to switch into. And Pokemon that do switch into it, like Corviknight, can't really take it out in one hit. Even Brave Bird can't do so, making it so that you have a lot of room to run with Bulu. Admittedly, it is going to prefer support of things like Spikes or Future Sight in order to deter things like Buzzwell, which can actually do pretty well against it, but get a lot of mileage out of Bulu. Not the most defensively oriented presence right now, although it does have some decent matchups. It can resist the stabs from Urshifu Rapid Strike, for instance, but all in all, it's a very nice offensive option in the metagame right now. Moving down, there's also a couple of other Pokemon rose to B+. We see Victini from B to B+, and Mew skyrocketing up from C+ to B+, one of the biggest movers of this entire shift. As for Victini, it's just growing a little more solid over time. People are noticing its versatility with both physical and special attacking sets, or even mixed attacking sets if that's your vibe. Coupled with the fact that it's got boots and nice speed tire, good natural check to things like Buzzwell, like Tapu Lele, and it's able to outrun the whole slew of Pokemon in that range. Outrun things like Landorus T, outrun Urshifu Rapid, outrun Tapu Lele, Hydreigon, Dragonite, you name it. Pokemon in that kind of 80 to 95 range, or 80 to 98 range, or whatever it is in this metagame, which is very common. That gives Victini a nice leg up. It's hard to fit, but it's really good at abusing things like Clefable and grass types that aren't named Kartana, and that's pretty impressive because of that. As for Mew, it's actually a very surprising Pokemon, something that I didn't anticipate rising this quickly, let alone much at all. When it comes to Mew, it's predominantly being used as a utility set. The combination of knockoff and spikes is very important because it can really deter heavy-duty boot pivots. Things such as Slowking, for example, you're going to get spikes up for free against it virtually. That coupled with the fact that you're going to get the knockoff off, so it's never going to really be able to switch in repeatedly anymore. Regenerator looping is no longer valid, and it even has Will-O-Wisp to threaten physical attackers. Soft-boiled, it has enough speed that it can easily deter things like Nidoking, forcing it to lose Life Orb so it can't be broken, and with, again, to deter things like Leech Life on Buzzwell or Swords Dance Tapu Bulu. Pokemon that really would normally be like, oh, I could just sit on this knockoff Spike special wall, but no, not when it comes to Mew having Will-O-Wisp there. A couple of other Pokemon rose up as well. We're going to see Como rise up from the depths of B- back up to B. A little bit of a revitalization movement. Much like Buzzwell, it has a good matchup against a number of common physical attackers. However, unlike Buzzwell, it doesn't have recovery. It doesn't have quite the offensive profile, but it makes up for it in having Stealth Rocks and a nice potential versatile profile. Has special attacking options as Swords Dance, Blood Drum, you name it. So that's really interesting there. All in all, I think Como is still more fringe than that, but it does fit within the context of the B rank right now. Blacephalon is another Pokemon that rose up. The Clown, the Almighty Clown. It's very hard to use it in a metagame where Ghost types are kind of limited to Dragapult, maybe the occasional Aegislash as is, but if you are to use it, it does great. Nothing really wants to switch into a combination of Shadow Ball plus a Fire move plus Trick. Trick is really able to force crippling on things like Blissey, Toxapex, Tyranitar, Heatran, And then you can kind of just pummel through bulky offensive teams. Nothing switches into it too well, and that is of the utmost importance, therefore making it so that while Buzzwell is hard to use and you kind of need to pair it with a slow U-turn or teleporter and reliable defog, you can still make the most of it in this metagame, if you will. Yeah, so next up we have two more Pokemon that rose up. Both of these Pokemon from the C ranks. Zapdos Galar was actually from C+. It's a fan favorite in this channel, I've noticed, and it is defying the odds, boosting itself back up to B- rank for the time being. It's a very strong Pokemon, and while it is overwhelmed, we're seeing a lot less physically defensive regenerative Pokemon, more special defensive Toxic, more Slowking over Slowbro. That makes it more punishing. The damage it has will at least stick to a greater extent, and it can maybe force kills rather than just chip. That alone is enough to bolster Zapdos Galar's viability just a little bit on those more offensive teams that want to abuse defog. As for Grimmsnarl, another Pokemon rising up from the depths of C-, barely even ranked all the way back up to C+. It's mainly because it's a screen setter that does naturally well against Dragapult. Dragapult being a pretty oppressive Pokemon to more offensive teams, therefore making Grimmsnarl a option is worth considering over Tapu Koko. Tapu Koko is still the most common screener, but Grimmsnarl is definitely better than things like Regieleki, which are alternative options, and I would really stand by its viability in this metagame. Next up, we have the drops from the viability rankings in the SSOU tier. I'm not going to go through each and every one of these. I'm really going to go through the main ones in like the A through C ranks. Like once we get to the Pokemon dropping to C- and unranked, I'm not going to go through all of them individually. If you guys have questions, let me know in the comments and I'll respond to each and every one of you. But let's go ahead and go through the major shifts here. We had a lot of Pokemon get better, and not as many get worse in the top part of the tier, which is actually pretty cool. We're seeing a more versatile metagame. While there are a couple Pokemon that do still dominate the top of usage, the kind of like the top 25 to 40 Pokemon are all still really solid in this metagame, and I think that's a sign of a good tier. We're seeing more versatility in terms of archetypes. We're seeing, a lot of bulky offense and balance alongside more extreme archetypes. We're seeing a lot of different structures form as well, and I think that's pretty cool. The big dropper is going to be Slowking, dropping from S to A+. We didn't even consider it for S-. Okay, we did consider it. We didn't vote it to be S-, though. We just didn't feel like it was there. Future Sight, people are kind of finding ways to play around it. And while Teleport is still super great, it's a good specialty defensive pivot, I definitely would advise trying out Slowking. There are a lot of things that abuse it. We're seeing more Ghost types, Dark types, Electric types, even in this metagame right now, while Grass types still remain common. Willowboom again falling off a little bit as we see in a second, but still, all in all, Slowking is something that you can take advantage of. It's still a great pivot. Future Sight and Scald Burns can be threatening, and it sets up teammates nicely, but that's really all that she wrote for Slowking, making it so that it's more, really good rather than like metagame defining right now, if you will. Next up, we have Bisharp. Bisharp trending in the opposite direction of Weevil right now due to being slower and reliant on Sucker Punch for revenge killing purposes. It's a lot harder to integrate onto more offensive teams, which is where those dark types like Weevil and Bisharp would really fit. Moreover, we're also going to see things like Crawdon a bit later down the list, as you see here, also fall off. Dark types that aren't named Weevil, it's harder to fit them right now. Even Tyranitar is seeing a bit of a drop in usage. It didn't quite qualify for a drop here, but yeah, even down the list, you'll see Zarude, Obstagoon, both dropping as well. So yeah. Bisharp's Choice Band set and Swords Dance sets are still good. I personally like Chopple's Swords Dance a lot, the set I showcased in the other video the other day, but truth be told, it's just harder to fit right now. It does still provide the Ghost Resist, it does still provide a strong dual stab combination, but it definitely doesn't provide much defensively, that aside, and it's mediocre due to the lack of speed, unfortunately. So it's going to fall into the A- rank, where it's still good, but not great, if you will. Speaking of Pokemon falling from A to A-, we're also going to see Rillaboom, which surprised a lot of people, so let's get into this one. Rillaboom is a Pokemon that the metagame really is taking advantage of right now. We're seeing an abundance of Volcarona, Tornadus Therian, even Zapdos running, more quick sets that can kind of make quick work of it with Hurricane or even Offensive Heat Wave. And there's a couple of fact that Swords Dance sets are never really winning the game anymore. There's so much alternative terrain, a lot of Pokemon that are faster grass resist. I mean, if we just go back here before, we see things like Weavile with Ice Shard, or Dragonite, of course, an actual fast resist. Buzzwell is a huge problem there. Victini, even a couple Como there and there. Melmetal's around. All in all, there just isn't as much room for Rillaboom right now. I feel as if it's a good Pokemon, but no longer a great one. I feel as if it really only works on specific bulky offense and hyper offensive teams, and in those archetypes where it used to be more of a staple due to the abundance of offensive utility you get with Grassy Glide, it's no longer the case. The metagame is more relying on natural revenge killers, super fast Pokemon, and priority from things like Weavile and even Urshifu Rapid. I think that it's just not Rillaboom's phase right now, and I think it'll definitely come back to A rank in the future, though. Speaking of Pokemon that were kind of metagame defining at one point, but no longer are, Extradrill is going way down. A Pokemon that was previously was A+ ranked earlier parts of the metagame is now B. That is wild. Extradrill's viability has skyrocketed downward, and now it's hitting its lowest point yet. Unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of things that check it, be it priority like the aforementioned Grassy Glide and Aqua Jet, or things like faster Pokemon just subduing it, minimizing it. And then also, of course, Pokemon like Corviknight and Skarmory that are both great right now, just completely blanket. It's a tough time to be Extradrill in this metagame right now. It's going to be interesting to see if that sticks or if that changes, so we'll have to stay tuned and see where that goes. We already touched on Crawdaunt, but again, it dropped twice. It dropped from B to C+, not just B to B-. It's just really hard to use right now. Outside of Trick Room teams, there's no real place for it. If you want to use a Dark-type Breaker, Weavile and even Bisharp are just outright better than it. With things like Urshifu Rapid, Tapu Fini, and Buzzwell being as common as they are, Crawdaunt is never really getting up breaking power, and previously the main reason to use it was whenever it got in, and it's hard to bring it in because it's so fragile and slow, it's just going to be a complete wrecking ball. Now it's not even that case. It's just not able to break as well. If you want to use a slow, tanky breaker, use Melmetal. If you want to use a fast dark type blazing through the tier, use Weavile. If you want to use a strong, not quite fast but priority dependent breaker that's dark type, use Bisharp. All of those roles are really overtaken. Crawdaunt, in my opinion, would even be C right now, but yeah, C+ for the time being. Speaking of Pokemon falling down that are water types, we're also going to see Suicune take a trip back down to the C+ rank, which is perhaps unsurprising. It is our U-Vibe usage right now. Suicune is still a nasty, devastating sweeper in the right matchup, but the thing is, it's super inconsistent. A lot of teams are able to take advantage of it, out-offense it, not give it setup opportunities, or force it into the corner. That alone is enough to deter Suicune, which doesn't really truly check or counter things in the long haul. And if it does, it's forced to rest, and that kind of makes it easy to take advantage of, if you will. Some other Pokemon falling to C+ rank are Mungus, Latios, Primarina, and Zarude. We'll talk about these, and then I'll more list the remainder ones, because, going down to Pokemon dropping to C and C- is kind of super fringe, and forget about it. They're not ranked anymore. They're not viable. We don't need them anymore. As for Mungus, it's just a super passive Pokemon. Misty Train, it does super well against Tapu Fini, but it's funny because Misty Train really makes it super passive. You can't get sleep Pokemon. That coupled with Ferrothorn being a steady Pokemon in the metagame right now, and once you get that sleep off, Mungus is so passive, it doesn't really do much besides check Urshifu Rapid, Tapu Fini, and Willowboom. It's hard to make use of. A lot of Pokemon like Heatran, Corviknight take advantage of it, and all in all, I just would advise against using a Mungus right now in general. As for Latios, it's hard because you always feel like you could get some viability out of Latios, but even without Pursuit, it just doesn't have the right move combination, doesn't have the power to break through the metagame right now, doesn't have the defensive really usage. It's tough. I wish Latios was better right now. I think it'd be cool to drop some Dracos with the OG Draco dropper. But unfortunately for Latios, it's just not the case. It's not in the cards right now. I'll have to wait and see if better days lie ahead. When it comes to Primarina, it's tough in the shadow of things like Tapu Fini that are just better with Combine, better with trapping sets. Specs Primarina, fringe at best. Still, it's walled. It's easy to switch into one stab, kind of regenerate around, if you will. Primarina has seen better days and likely will again in the future. But for now, it's dropping into C ranks alongside Zarude, which probably should have been dropped before. It was really good in the Spectrum metagame, but since then, we're seeing so much things like Buzzwell, Dragonite, Volcarona, other grass types, other flying types that really can do well against it. Revenge killers like Specs Dragapult can take it out from high levels of health as well. And even Weavile is kind of a competitive dark type, which forms a more offensively synergistic win condition right now. Unfortunately for Zarude, it's just not in the cards at the moment. Anyway, a handful of other Pokemon dropped in lower ranks right now. We're going to see things like, Ditto dropping from B- to C, and then a couple from C+ to C, such as Obstagoon, Quagsire, and Togekiss. And then some Pokemon falling from C to C- as well. Alakazam, Celesteela, Conkeldurr, Hatterene, Marowak, Alola, Uxie, Xatu. And then some Pokemon, unfortunately, from C or C- rank are no longer ranked. Diggersby, again, another Pokemon from the Spectrum metagame, arguably. Nidoqueen, Rhyperior, Araquanid, Gyarados, Mantine, Mimikyu, and Thundurus. Let me know if you have any questions on any Pokemon you see on the screen right now and they're dropping. I'll be glad to give you guys a response in the comments down below. Until then, you guys have a great day, a great weekend. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. Alright, bye.